Alright, the first step we're going to take in this bumper removal, we have 7 10mm bolts on the top of this bumper. We also have 2 push pins that need to come out. On the bottom side, there are 13 8mm bolts completely across the bottom of this bumper. Now, on the sides of the vehicle, we're going to have 7 5.5mm bolts that line this fender well. We're also going to have 3 10mm bolts that come down through the side to hold the bumper to the fender. Also on this side, when the bumper comes off, you will have 1 factory plug right here that needs to come undone. Other than this plug, you'll repeat the same process on the opposite side with the 7 5mm bolts and your 3 10mm bolts here. Now that we have all the bolts out, we'll complete the removal of this bumper. Each side, just give a slight tug, and the bumper will come completely off. Once the bumper comes off, you'll have a plug here to undo, and you'll have another plug here and another plug there. Now we're going to start putting the brackets on for this push bumper. First bracket we're going to need is this tall bracket, kind of upside down L. It goes on the back side. Okay, there's 2 bolts right here through this middle bar. We're going to use the outside bolt. The next bracket you're going to need is this one, kind of looks like a C. Okay, we're going to put it right on the front. Sometimes they can be hard, just give it a tap and it'll go on. Now we're going to loosely mount this bracket. That way we can tighten our other bolts later on. First bolt we're going to need is a 3.5-inch bolt with a washer. So the bolt will go through the front. It'll come through the back. And then just put a nut on the back of it. Once you have both brackets installed, make sure they're pressed firmly outwards and then begin to tighten. I'm going to start by tightening the center bolt. While you're tightening, make sure your bracket stays level. Alright, now that we've got the brackets mounted on the front of this vehicle, we're going to go ahead and run our wiring for the lighting for this front bumper. On these Ford Interceptors, you have pass-through wires. These wires are already ran through the firewall, so you don't have to run any extra wires. So we're going to grab this green wire, being that we use green for our front lighting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect a green wire to this green wire. I'm going to crimp it on. And then we're going to ground it. Now the ground on these vehicles is right behind these wires. So I've already grounded it there. I've hooked our green wire up. Now all we have to do is route our wires over to these brackets. Now that we've got our wires connected to our pass-through wires, what I've done is I've routed our wires over to this passenger side of the vehicle, making sure to zip tie them up out of the way, especially to stay out of the way of this intercooler so the wires do not come in contact with this hot surface. I've ran the wires out of this bracket to come out of the front bumper. Now our next step is to put back on the factory bumper. Now that our factory harnesses are plugged back in, we're going to lift the bumper back up into place. We'll use a couple bolts just to hold the bumper in place while we work the bumper back in around the vehicle. Take our 10mm bolts, stick them back in to hold the bumper back to the vehicle. Now that we have our 3 10mm bolts holding the bumper back to the fender, we're going to put our 7 5.5mm bolts back into our fender well. Now that we've completed the same process for the passenger side of the vehicle, it's time to put our 10mm bolts back into the top side of this bumper. So we're going to take out these 10mm that we put in to temporarily hold the bumper in place. Put this front cap back over the top of it and put our 10mm bolts back in. Now that we have the brackets on, we're going to put the push bumper on. When I put these brackets on, I left them fairly loose. That way we can get the bumper on correctly. So now we're going to lift the bumper up and set it on the brackets. Alright, now what we're doing is we're pushing the bolts through from the outside where the nuts will be on the inside. You've got 4 of these bolts and 4 nuts per side. Once you have your 8 bolts in, go ahead and snug them down. Tighten them down really tight. Your 8 that go in here in your sides, and then your 8 that go on the brackets protruding from the vehicle. Once you have those tightened down, you can take all of your wires that come off the bumper and your wires that you ran from the inside and run them back inside of this box here and make all your connections. That way they're sealed behind this box. To take this cover plate off, we have 1 Phillips head screw on the back side here. Just go ahead and put some pliers on this nylock nut. Put a Phillips head on the other end. Unscrew it off. And the cover plate comes off, exposing your wiring. This is where we're going to make all of our connections behind here. Now, most exciting part of this install, the end. All we have left are our hot and our ground wire for all of the lights that are on this bumper. I've taken all of our wires up here that go to all of our lights. I've connected all the hots together, all the grounds together. Now all we have to do is connect them to the wires that we previously ran out from the vehicle. We'll connect our black wire to the ground wires, and we will crimp it. We will take all of our hot wires to the green wire that we ran out for our hot, and we'll also crimp it. Once that's crimped, tuck it back in to your loom. Take your panel, slide your panel back in place. Put your bolt in, put the nut back on the bolt, and tighten that down. You have now completed the install of a Setina PB450 lighted push bumper for a 2018 Ford Interceptor.